Hard to believe it's September, but here we are. And we are here to celebrate and to talk about this book that is about to be launched. I think it's final printing and probably in the packing stage, because I think we're due getting them the end of the month, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
So they must be in the mail, like they say. It's in the mail. All right. So today we're going to share a little bit about the book chapters. We're going to put people in little groups to have conversations about, you know, what the book chapters are about for each of us, and share insights and thoughts. So Damian, do you want to add anything before we get started here?
No, I want to welcome everybody. I think that everybody has been here before, so I don't see any new faces. And maybe Joel, you came here before as a guest in a presentation a few years ago, I think. Great to have you back. And the editors of the book, Francine, Joel, Lily, and I, 4 of us, had to work very hard, but particularly Francine. So I want to take this opportunity to recognize her because she had to coordinate. How many people? 28, 20, how many people?
I think we had a total of 26 authors, I believe. Well, it might be 26 or 28. I don't at this point, Damian, my brain is fried, so I don't remember.
I had to share with you that was not easy. So thanks to everybody. Here we have 7 of the writers. So thanks all of the writers who participated and collaborated with us. We got some guests. And so we want to maybe hear also Francine a little bit about your experience as she had the main job of coordinating everything. So thank you again for your work.
The cat herder.
Well, I will say it was, first of all, it's lovely to see all of these faces again, you know, just marvelous. And I think I feel so delighted for a couple of reasons. One was to have the opportunity to work with all of these colleagues and to really, you know, there were a lot of one-on-one exchanges with people and conversations, and it was absolutely a pleasure to be able to do that. And then the other is looking over the final manuscript. I thought, wow, this is such fresh material. It's such fresh material that I think it's going to have a big impact. And so I'm just going, yay, yay, group. It was wonderful to get the perspectives of so many different cultures and voices and language and context. And I think that's the power of bringing together a group like this, like Lily and Damian have done with ACSN, that we really are bringing new voices, different perspectives into the coaching field and into the coaching conversation. So I want to just kind of go back at you, Lillian and Damian, for doing this, and to all of you for writing from your experience. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Francine. I think that the original idea was from Lily. So Lily, I think you deserve the credit for having the idea. So somebody has to come up with the idea. And I think that was you. So maybe our idea with Lily today was to get the writers just to share a little bit about our chapters for a few minutes, and then go to small groups to share some of that work. So, but Lily, do you want to share a little bit about the history, and maybe then later Joel also, as one of the editors, may want to say something.
Wow, you caught me off guard. I don't remember that. I mean, I can hardly remember yesterday. So all I know is that all the literature comes from the UK, mostly from Supervision. So it was time for us to make our mark over here in North America. And with ACSN, I mean, we've got close to 400 members now. So from, what do we say, 26 different countries. So it was time for us to sort of make our mark. And thank you, Francine, for being the lead cat herder. I know it was like birthing a child. It's the first big book I've been involved in a major way. I mean, little chapters here and there, but never like a whole book. And Joel for joining us on the editorial committee. It was an interesting process for sure. So thank you. And our next book.
What do I want to say about that? What is important about this book is the first book that supervisors in the Americas together writing. It's like there is not any other book about supervision from the Americas. Like as Lily was saying, all of the literature, basically from the UK. And from France, Michel Morat has written, I don't know, many books, but they're all in French. So this is really an opportunity for the whole world to learn about the perspectives of something that is new in the Americas. Like we went through the first training in the Americas with CSA, that was in 2013. So it's going to be 10 years now. So these are the only 10 years that supervision has been in the Americas present. So I think that this is a really pioneer book. So we all should be very proud of having that book. And it's a collaboration process too. What is really nice to see how we all collaborate and support each other. And when we thought about the book, the idea was to have at least one person from the Americas in each chapter. So we had people from different countries participating, from Canada, US, Mexico, Argentina, and then from Europe, France, UK. I don't know if I'm missing one country. But the idea was that people from the Europe will collaborate with people from the Americas, at least one person from the Americas in each chapter. So that I think that was our idea when we started asking for proposals. Now, we asked for proposals, and I think with the exception of one or two, we accepted all of the proposals. So basically, this book was done that way. We said, like when we do our conferences, okay, we have this, who would like to present? Here in this space too, it's like we really want to open the space for people to participate. We ask, we have this space, who would like to participate? With the book was like that. We asked, okay, we're writing the book, everybody could raise their hand, with exception Lily, I think of one or two proposals, I think they were not strong enough. But everybody else was accepted. So I want you to know that too, that this was by people's being willing to participate. And many of us have done some new research. As Francine was saying, these are completely new things as a result of our research. So we're going to be talking about that. So Joel, I don't know if you want to say anything too before we start hearing from people's chapters.
Sure, happy to. You know, for all you authors, everybody who helped, just really appreciate your contributions. And I think, you know, I'll speak for myself and for ICF. And, you know, when we did our literature review many years ago and had that published, you know, one of the things we talked about in there was the kind of sort of the evolution, the trail of supervision and from country to country or region to region. And so to me, having this work for supervision in the Americas is just really cool. And from an ICF standpoint, you know, I think it helps because you know, we want to show how important supervision is. And, you know, it just helps to affirm that, I think, to the profession. So I just want to thank everybody who's contributed, especially Francine. The book would not have happened without Francine. She was just fantastic. So thank you.
Lily, should we get people to start talking for 2-3 minutes? It's everybody about their chapters. So should we do that next? What do you suggest?
Yeah, let's just do a real quick recap of each of the chapters from the authors, and then we're going to break into small groups with the authors so you can have a more in-depth conversation about the chapters. How's that? Does that work? So who's up first? Who's brave enough to put their hand up and start the roll? Thank you, Susie. Go for it.
I'm the brave one. No, what I would like to share here is that for me was a great experience. The word creativity for me comes with a lot of baggage. It's so heavy, it's so big, and it's like a lot of pressure, like in all our groups. It's like, be more creative, ICF, supervision. And my curiosity went really far in this theme. And when I read what for Wikipedia was creativity, it even shocked me more, right? Creativity is creating something new. My goodness, how am I going to do something new? For me, musicians do something new, artists. I'm always like impressed when an artist can paint something new or somebody play a new music never heard before. So what did it really meant for us supervisors and coaches to be creative? And that's what made me go through this research. And what I learned is that we really have to be courageous. We really need to invite our fears and our curiosity. Now, what I did really quickly in this chapter, my interest was to understand how do us, coaches and coaches supervisors, utilize creativity in our sessions. What is really creativity? Do we really need to do something totally new, or we can build in something else? What is creativity? What is the impact in the session for our supervisee and for us as supervisors? How confident we feel as supervisors to use these creative techniques? What are our limits? What inspires us? When do we decide I'm going to use this, I'm not going to use that? And finally, what does it take for coaches to be courageous and confident, for us coaches to do it? So I did this research. I went through some 20, I think there were 20 sessions that I listened to, and I interviewed, I made some research and surveys, and I interviewed like 20 coaches. I don't remember right now exactly. And that's how it all started. And I invite you all to come into this interesting journey on creativity. Is this
Thanks, Susie.
okay? Something
Perfect.
else?
Perfect. No, we're going to go into smaller groups later. So this is just sort of a big context. Great. Thank you. I'm going to invite Leanne next. Leanne, can you speak to the chapter that you were involved in with me?
Yeah, thank
Thanks.
you. Yeah, I was thinking about this last night, actually, yesterday, and I think, and I wrote some kind of notes for myself because I think, because I've got jet lag brain, but also I wanted to really speak to the process that Lily, Mary, and I went through, which was really about like, we just kept spiraling down. Like we just had to keep letting go, unlearning, unknowing, challenging ourselves, like really like having a thought and then saying, is that right? Is that true? Like just the dialogue that we had in which this chapter arose from was very powerful because we just had a lot of, well, speaking for myself, I just had a lot of unconscious bias, a lot of sacred cows, a lot of the ways in which I look at the world through my whiteness. And it was humbling and very emotional, I think, to just really listen and learn and talk and try and pull something together that would be of value, but not make it a thing, like not reify it, not say like, oh, this is the thing, but to keep having being able to speak about Indigenous cultures and wisdom and our coaching and our supervision in a way that allowed inquiry and allowed more curiosity and more not knowing and more learning, as opposed to saying, here it is. Yeah, did I do that justice, Lily?
Absolutely. So our chapter was about supervising coaches who work in the Indigenous space in Canada. And so we interviewed some coaches. I think the chapter itself, while I think we're quite happy with it, doesn't do justice to the conversations that we had in the space, which were pretty amazing conversations. Thanks, Leanne.
So really would be good when people start talking and they share the name of the chapter so people can hear the name.
I don't even know what the name of the chapter is.
And maybe also where they are from. Like for example, Susie from Mexico. So it's good for people to know where you are based, so how this is really a global participation.
Thank you. Let's go to Ken. Ken, would you like to share just for a couple of minutes? Thanks, Leanne.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Well, thanks also, just adding my gratitude to Francine, Damian, Lily, Joel, Amia. I'm going to speak for just not myself, but also for Lynn DeLay, because she's not able to be here. She's suffering from COVID. She's going to be fine. But we had 2 chapters. One I co-wrote with her and one I wrote on my own. The chapter I wrote, and both are really about presence, which I see as literally our primary responsibility as coach supervisors. So I am in Newtown, Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia. The chapter I wrote is Supervision in Globally Challenging Times, Supporting Coach Well-Being by Reflecting Through 3 Lenses. So, I believe that in all of us, there's a space of attention and presence, depth and expansiveness that supports our well-being. And that's in the midst of all of the toxic polarity and craziness that's happening here in the US as we prepare for the election season, Americas and around the world. We all know when we're experiencing it. So I explore what mindful reflection is about through these 3 lenses of self, other, and system. And how do we work with the anxiety, fear, and judgment in the current environment to get to a place that is more of equanimity? How do we really help the supervisees notice dissipation, distraction, even despair when they're unwell? And how can they move themselves back to that place of well-being? So that's really what that chapter is about. The second chapter, the next chapter, co-written with Lynn, who is the lead author, and she's up in Williamstown, Massachusetts. Framework for group presence in group coaching supervision. So in this chapter, well, first off, who would know that the poet Rumi had something to say about group supervision? Here's his quote: "Be with those who help your being. Don't sit with indifferent people. Your work is deeper." Okay? So in this chapter, we ask ourselves some questions, and we started to look to answer them. And it was really about how we presence in a group setting. What does group presence look like? What does it feel like? What allows it? What sometimes limits it? So how do you evoke reflection in groups? So what we did and what we've been working on and with for probably about 3 or 4 years is a model of co-facilitation that we talk about. And Lynn brought this beautiful metaphor of music and resonance into the chapter that we work with and leverage to talk about how we can enhance deeper awareness and this resonance in a group supervision process. So that's the 2 chapters.
Thanks, Ken. Sounds very intriguing. Sarah, how would you like to start the conversation on your chapter?
By bringing Alexis in. She's going to start us.
We were chatting about tag teaming because Sarah and I worked on this together, and the process was also really meta in the sense that we were writing about resiliency and writing about resourcing, restoring, and responding through supervision, and talking about how the process ideally is mutually beneficial for the supervisor and the supervisee at its best. And the funny thing was, we came together actually at the ACSN conference in 2020 because there was a speaker who was talking about resilience. Sarah said something, and I pinged her in the chat, and I was like, "Ooh, I love talking about resilience too." And then we were like, we should have coffee. And all of this was happening virtually. And we just started talking. The offer for the book chapters came out, and we were like, we should take this public. We should take it on the road. And so we started working together in this really organic way of sharing a Google Doc and chiming in and offering feedback and thoughts and riffing. And I'll let Sarah take from there what we came up with in that process.
All right, thank you. I love that energy. 2020 started the pandemic and questioning and lots of world things happening on so many levels. And we were, you might recall the tweet that came out by Damian Barr: "We are not all in the same boat. We are all in the same storm." And Alexis and I both lived on the West Coast, Alexis in California, me in Victoria, Canada. And we were really captivated because the ocean and the storms are very much part of our culture, our way of knowing and being. And an anonymous author penned a poem from that Barr cited. And it was the last two lines that captivated us. It is very important to see beyond what is seen at first glance, not just looking, more than looking, seeing. And for us, that gave us a metaphor to carry through a chapter on supervision around how do we be in the storm. So we began to ask ourselves, we know that there's always going to be forces that impact us. How can we best support ourselves to source and resource and also provide that calm in the storm? So we read all sorts of things on natural systems and found our way into a resilience definition, if you will, from natural systems that was really around absorbing, adapting, continuing. And so we kept experimenting with this. What are we noticing in ourselves, in our conversations, in our supervisee space? And from our experience and the experience of our supervisees and our and their coachees, so we were going 3 levels, we came up with a framework for really around responding. And how do we start and begin to notice our core? You know, when you go into physical space, it's always about strengthen your core, strengthen your core. So we wanted to look at that and framed a model around that, beginning with 7 core energy sources. And I'll let you read the rest of the book, or we'll get into the conversation to play with that a little bit. But we had a lot of play trying out, what would that look like? If we were drawing on this energy source, what would that look like? And so could we have permission to take maybe 30 more seconds, and Alexis can bring one of our play pieces into the room?
Sure, 30 seconds and go.
It can actually riff off of Leanne's creativity ideas too. So if you are experiencing anxiety, a tool to manage anxiety is to name the things in the immediate space, because it anchors you. It's orienting. I'm sure many of you know about that. The opposite is also true when the space is feeling constricting or too stormy. If you expand by naming it things other than what's in your immediate space, then what becomes possible then expands as well. So one of the exercises that we did, because we wanted to prioritize being actionable as well, I want to invite you all to look around your space, and there's going to be a thing that's very clearly a thing, but you can call it something else. So this is a Sharpie, but I might look at it and say turtle. And then I might look at something else, which is a button of my daughter playing soccer, and say bricklayer, or anything that is clearly a thing, but call it something else. And just do that for 15 seconds, and then we'll come back. I'm probably close to 15 seconds. And so I'll let you do your own reflections or in the breakouts on it. But the tiniest shift of, oh, more is possible than just what I'm seeing here. And it's a way that it's made manifest by shifting what we're naming something. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Alexis. And thank you, Sarah. All right, who's next?
Maybe Lynn and Martin. And by the way, it's so great to see Alexis and Sarah that you met at one of our conferences. And as a result of that, you collaborate. And I think it's not only your case, it's the case of other people here collaborating too. So we really, this was our vision. So it's great when it happens. Thank you for sharing. So Martine and Lynn, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Lynn Harrison, and I'm from Whistler, British Columbia, Canada, which is a couple of hours north of Vancouver, if you're not familiar with it. And my partner, Martine, is in Paris. And I'll maybe kick us off, and then Martine, you can join in.
Yeah.
So our chapter was chapter 11, and we called it The Magic of Group Supervision. And where we kind of started with our research was we were just reflecting on why it was that a lot of North American coaches didn't seem to be engaging regularly in supervision. And then we thought about, well, why would they? You know, what might be the gains that come from supervision, and in particular group supervision? So what we set out to do is explore the learning experience of coaches, and we chose seasoned coaches, not brand new coaches, but coaches who had established practices in the Americas, who'd participated in group supervision led by a qualified coaching supervisor. Excuse me. We used a phenomenological approach, so we wanted to understand their lived experience of being in a group. And we interviewed deeply 10 different coaches from 5 different countries. So the US, Argentina, Canada, Uruguay, and Brazil. And we conducted the interviews in the language, French, English, Spanish, that they had actually gone through supervision using. So there was quite a lot of translating, as well as analyzing all the transcripts from our research. And what we were interested in is not only what they learned, but how the learning occurred and the impact of that learning. And so what we discovered was really very cool. We thought it was like magical. And I'll turn it over to you, Martine, to share a little bit about what those key findings were.
Yes. So first of all, I want to thank Ida Frizzi, who's been very key and instrumental in the fact that we were able to touch Spanish and Brazilian speaking countries. That even though she has not been in the research, she's been part of the team. So we have 3 main findings. It's all about the learning, as Lynn said. We were interested in changing the perception of Northern and Southern Americans coaches who may have conveyed an image of supervision not being for coaching, or supervision being for only junior coaches, and like something that would be close to coach mentoring. And so we looked at the learning, and the first finding was that the learning occurred through hearing others' cases, or from the reactions of others to our own cases. We called it an experience of being witnessed and witnessing others. So that was the first finding. Of course, it matched our experience. The second learning was that second insight was that the learning occurred through having an emotional experience, and it's because the emotion was there that the people learned. It was facilitated by the connection to the other group members, not only the supervisor but the group members. So the emotional connection is key to the learning of the group. And the third insight was that the learning occurred through being both part of the group, but also observing the group's evolution as an entity. And this last one is something that is very specific to group supervision, when the 2 first ones may also occur in individual supervision if, for the first one, supervisor shares their experience. The 3 were really magical, as the people really stated it, and we have those verbatim of the people saying, I could not believe it was magical. It was incredible. And so that's what we wanted to convey and translate in our chapter. And we hope that we have revealed the magical kind of experience that the people found in supervision.
Great. Thanks, Martine and Lynn. Who's next? I see Lillian waiting patiently. 3 minutes, Lillian, off you go.
And it might even be shorter because there's only me from my group to speak about our chapter with Terry, Hildebrand, and Kimsey McAnally, and Mary Jo Asmus. And Mary Jo has retired since we did this study. I don't know if you all knew that, but she was certainly a vital part of our group. What we looked at was very different than these, magical and transformative conversations and all this felt experience. We used our research training. 3 of the 4 of us have been trained in research from an academic point of view and did our own studies to graduate. And then the 4th also was involved practically in research. So what did we do? We do the research study, country supervision, a study of perceptions and practices in the Americas. What we were looking to do, and the data was collected, it's hard to believe how fast time goes. As Damian, you were saying earlier, it's been 10 years. Well, so it's been 4 years already since we collected this data. It is hard to believe that was 2018. So it's certainly not a miss. If anyone wants to replicate or start replicating our baseline, that would be amazing. So we did a survey that was worldwide. Many of you were no doubt tapped to participate and fill out. A lot of it, as I said, was baseline, kind of demographics, a bit of the experience of supervision. Who gets supervision? Where are they? How much do people pay? How did they find their supervisor? What kinds of topics at sort of a global level, not the in-depth like Lynn and Martine or Lily and Leanne. And it was more like in a general sense, what kinds of things are you tackling in supervision? Are you doing it in the individual or are you doing it in group? So it was kind of a worldwide baseline. We had 1,200, I'm looking now to be absolutely accurate, 1,280 participants that qualified to include their data. Of those, almost 500 were from the Americas. So that's the group that we looked at. I'm going down to 497. Of that 497, 427 were in the US, and then followed by 44 respondents from Canada. So we found out a whole bunch of things. I'm just looking, most of these 438 were external coaches. So that was the primary sample that we looked at. I'm trying to see, I'll cut to the chase of one of the interesting results of how much people were paid. I do want to find the exact number. I think it was around $201 was paid to supervisors for individual supervision and less for group supervision. I think it was 145, but I'm not right now. I'll just see if I can find it exactly. Another finding that we thought was very interesting was how do people find their supervisor? As Lynn and Martine were just discussing, like how did people, I think you discussed, it was you, there was been a few already, who was discussing how do you get to the space and why do people do supervision or why don't they? So we talked a lot about the greater institutional environment in the Americas, which does not require in general, as we know, the ICF does not require supervision. Unlike many, if not most, if not all of the European and other coaching professional associations. So that leaves a lack of bit of impetus in the environment that we work in. So when we did find people, and I know from my own experience too, how do people acquire me as a supervisor or use me as their partner in that space? Usually it's when they've had some personal exposure. They know They know me, they've gotten a chance to know me, they feel a little safe. As you guys were just talking about, I was very interested in that, the emotional connection. On one hand, that's really interesting. And on the other hand, I thought, wait a minute, isn't all of our work based on emotional connection to some degree? Well, guess what? It also starts with the acquisition. I'd be curious in how your study, how, if you looked at that, how people found and chose to enroll in that group supervision experience, how they felt safe enough. So I think you need to have some kind of exposure so people feel safe with you. There has to be some incipient feeling of safety, but that's something I'm extrapolating from what we learned as well. So a lot of this, are we done?
I think we need to move on. Thank you.
No problem.
That
It's
was
all
great.
there.
I love that piece of research too. We've been using it quite a bit in different venues and I'm seeing it quoted everywhere. So thank you for doing that. Yes.
Great.
All right. Who's next?
I think us.
Us? Are we the
Yes.
finals? Are you sure we don't have anyone
I think
else?
you can read in the chat if I am not wrong. You got 2 more to talk.
Who else?
We can start with the group one. We have, as you can see, there are a few group supervision chapters. So we wrote one with Lily. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, we actually took a different approach. We took a transcript of a group supervision and we dissected it and talked about the different elements of it so that somebody could see in real time what one might look like. And of course, there's no right and wrong way of doing supervision. It's style and it's what's happening in the moment. So that was an interesting experiment for us to play around with. Less academic in terms of lots of quotes and research, other than talking about, you know, sort of, I think we quoted a couple of key authors, but that was a different approach for us.
But I think it's a very interesting complementation to the other one, complement the other chapters on group supervision. I think that people would enjoy just seeing the script of a session, what happened and how we analyze it. I think that that can be an interesting piece of reading. So you hear everybody, this is very interesting, isn't it? When you hear everybody sharing their little pieces. And then we have another article that we wrote together, another chapter with Lily about resistance to supervision. And Lillian is like also we started 4 years ago, saying, what happened? Why so much resistance in the Americas about supervision? And so we did the research and we got, we interviewed, I remember the exact number of how many people answered our survey now. But interesting, the topics are similar. I think that one of the key elements of resistance to supervision is not understanding it, misinformation, ignorance. And that's the importance of exposure. Lillian, you were talking before about that when you just researched 4 years ago. We also started with Lillian 4 years ago, trying to figure out why there was so much resistance in so many places. So we have a chapter about that, and I think that we got some interesting results and suggestions about what to do. But mainly what to do is doing this, like sharing information, sharing resources, presenting a chapter, talking to people about it, inviting people to try what is supervision, how it feels, what is the experience of supervision. And so we found that chapter interesting too. And then I also wrote a chapter with Eve Turner. And interestingly, we wrote this chapter before COVID-19, and it was about working virtually. So working virtually was very different in 2019 than now. So what we had to do is, after we have our research and we did a presentation at one of the Oxford Groups conferences, we said, okay, we need to go back and we need to do a second round, because this research after COVID-19 is very different how people feel about working virtually after a couple of years of COVID. So it's interesting, very different responses before COVID and after COVID. So the idea is that before COVID, 50% of the supervisors were working only in person, and they didn't work virtually, they didn't think it was good enough. And then after COVID, when they were working virtually, like almost everybody agreed that you can still do great work virtually. So that was one of the interesting points to share.
All right. Anybody else that has written and hasn't had a chance yet?
I think we're done, so we have enough time.
So I just want to, invite Francine to just bring forth the names and chapters of those that aren't represented here, and then we can go into a breakout room. How's that sound? You're on mute.
We are on mute, Francine.
There we go. Well, first of all, I want to bring into the room some of the authors, specifically who represent the Latin American point of view. We have a multi-systemic field model for culturally sensitive coaching supervision, and that was Ana Escalante. We have introducing supervision into training programs for professional coaches. That was Elena Espinal and Adriana Rodriguez. And we also have an ontological perspective on coaching, and that was Alicia Aguero and Angelica Tani Sturridge. We also have a couple of chapters that speak to from authors' experiences of how they have brought supervision into their organizations. James Lopata wrote about a business case for coaching supervision where his organization actually demonstrated that coaching supervision for coaches actually provides specific value add for the organization and for its clients. We also have a chapter by Jerry Browning and Theodora Fitzsimmons and Jackie Arnold, who write about instances of bringing coaching supervision into different types of organizations, including a government, a federal agency, as well as private organizations. And that one gave us an interesting comparison and contrast between bringing coaching supervision into organizations in the US and in the UK. Sarah Tennyson wrote about a systemic developmental approach to coaching supervision, where she writes about what she learned bringing coaching supervision into an organization, and specifically how the cultures of American organizations and corporations tend to need a different reframing of supervision for it to work. And then finally, we have Pamela McLean, who has written about her research in the developmental journey of the coach and how supervision plays into that. And Angela Wright, remaining relevant and fit for purpose, a core challenge for coaching. And so those voices are also in the room. And I thank you for letting me just bring them up.
Thanks, Francine. Yes, we don't want to forget our colleagues that aren't in our space today. All right, so we probably have an opportunity to spend some time in one breakout group. So maybe we shift a little bit. We had visions of having a number of breakout groups, but time-wise, we have time for one major breakout group or one main breakout group. Just to discuss, what did you hear? What excites you about what you've heard? Where are you most curious about the book? And then we'll come back into plenary for 5 minutes and have a celebration song. All right.
So how long, Lily, should we go? 8 minutes?
8 minutes, yes, thanks.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. We have about 3 minutes for people to share anything that came up in the groups that they'd like to share briefly.
Okay.
Who was that?
We were cut off. Francine was just telling us a little bit about books on ethics as well. So we were cut off in the middle of the sentence.
Anybody want to share any thoughts that came up for them?
Petra and then Lynn?
Yeah, I'll share for the discussion in our group, because it seems like I was the most outside, and first off, I have to say, I wasn't here for a while. I'm so glad to be back in this network. The energy is just beautiful. And I'm glad my move is behind me and I have time again and energy again. What strikes me the most is how adequate this book and the construction of this book is to what's going on in the system of coach supervision in the Americas. It's you could ask for papers and get 28 papers, and it could be very chaotic, or just incoherent, or whatever. But to me, what it feels like is it's a picture of what's going on, and it's this might channel into certain directions, but right now it's just what it is, and just feeling the intensity and seeing the gleam in all of your eyes, to me is a beautiful picture of what it is at this moment. And that's, rather than concrete contents, is what makes me curious about reading it. And it's exciting to be a part of that. Good moment in time.
Thank you, Peter. And that is a good opportunity to invite all of the writers of all of these chapters. If you would like to do a workshop and present here at the ACSN next year, so let us know if you want to get together and put together a workshop, a session, a webinar, and it would be great to have different webinars next year based on the book chapters. So that's an idea we were thinking with Lily. So Lynn.
What I was going to say is very similar to Petra's comments. As we were reflecting on this, we were just amazed at how this was such a systemic experience where all the different voices were invited to participate, and pretty much everyone who put a proposal in got to be part of this process. And the system just sort of magically sorted it all out, that there'd be all these different points of view and wisdom coming from all different directions. So we just thought it was a beautiful example of systems at work here. So thank you. And thank you for trusting in the process with this and leading us through.
So I think we need to start wrapping up. We have a couple of minutes. One last person want to share anything? Yes, Jane.
I've been wondering on so many fronts what the influence of COVID has had, and really how it has shifted our lives in so many ways. And so hearing it come up here too, wondering how has it impacted? What are the lasting changes from COVID in supervision?
Then maybe for the next book, to see, okay, what's coming up next.
After.
That's great. Thank you, Jane. And we mentioned something in some of the chapters but I think that what you're asking is a great question for all of us to collaborate and think, okay, what's coming up, what's next. So we have some announcements. We need to wrap up. Lily, anything you want to share?
Let's see, next month, third Monday of the month is Tatiana Bashkalova. She's coming to talk about the developmental stages of coaches. And then what else do we want to share?
She's going to be, and she has a new book, a new edition of her book, Developmental Coaching. So she's going to be talking about that.
I think that's it.
And next week, we have the Asian Coaching Supervision Network meeting, and we are going to do again another presentation. So if you want to come, Pam McLean, she's one of the writers also, she's going to come and talk about her chapter. And we want to invite the writers also, if you can join us, if you're available. You can see the information in our newsletter. In our letter, we sent you the link there for the meeting next week, Tuesday night in United States, Wednesday morning in Asia. For people in Europe, it's in the middle of the night, but I know our friend here, Michelle Moret, has been attending at 4 in the morning. So everybody's welcome.